Did you feel the whole world stop at that moment when he breathed his last and we kneel down and every knee bends in heaven, on earth, and under the earth, as Paul said in our second reading? It's like the universe and the galaxy just kind of stop in their rotation for a second as evil is conquered and goodness triumphs, and the Son of God breathes his last and hands himself over to the Father. That was the experience of the centurion standing beneath the cross, who pierced him with the lance. A guy who just showed up for work in the morning. Yeah, all right, crowd control, got to execute 3 prisoners. Yeah, we know how this goes. All right, boss, you want me to make sure he's dead? I'll do it. And suddenly he's just hit with this overwhelming sense of something is very different about this. This guy here that I've been watching all afternoon on that cross, he's not like any other prisoner I've ever seen. Usually they whine and they moan, or they beg for mercy, or they taunt us and they hurl all these insults at us. This guy hasn't said a word, except he said 7 things over 3 hours, and the last thing he said was, "It is finished," and at that moment he was gone. He didn't die until he was good and ready to go. Normally I'm in control of these crucifixions. He was calling the shots today. He was doing it all day long. You know how we've been reading stories all month that the Pharisees are looking to put him to death, and they surround him, they grab rocks, and he slips through their midst and goes away. He's just been jumping out of one hoop after another, escaping, eluding. But when he was ready, he walked into their trap, knowingly controlling the whole thing. Even both Gospels you heard today, Jesus is naming the terms, right? Go into the city, into the village, not that village, the one over there, find a colt no one has ever been on, and we'll ride that into Jerusalem. And they went, and they found it exactly as he had said. Where do you want us to set up the Passover for you? Go into the city and find a man carrying a jar of water, and follow him to the upper room. And they found it exactly as he had said. Completely in control, the Son of God, calling the shots, orchestrating the entire thing for our salvation. Well, really? I mean, there probably were a lot of guys carrying water around, right? It was the Passover feast in Jerusalem. It's the biggest event of the year. It's like the Super Bowl. It'd be like, go and follow the delivery truck around the Super Bowl stadium. No, actually, it's not like that. Men did not carry water in the ancient world. Women would go to the well. When Jesus meets at John chapter 4, he meets the woman at the well, not the guy at the well. It was something that the women did. A man carrying a big jar of water on his head would have stood out like nothing else. And Jesus knew exactly where he was going to be. It's believed, why was this guy carrying water? Probably a community of Essene Jews. These are the people who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, living out in the wilderness there in the Masada. Well, there was a group of them living in the city of Jerusalem too. They wore only linen cloths, and they lived in an all-male community. They were celibate men. Celibate men? Back then in the gospel? Yeah, Jesus talks about it. Paul talks about it. They both recommend it. I'm a vocation director at the Corps. I have to mention this when it comes up. There were celibate men living in Jerusalem, no women in the community, so when water ran out, one of them would go down and carry it. And it's one of those guys, a very rare thing. Jesus knew right where he was going to be. And when he steps into the trap with full knowledge and consent for our salvation, there's a fellow in a linen cloth standing there. Could it have been the same guy that was carrying the water? That's what they wore, those linen cloths. And they grab hold of him by the cloth, right? And what does he do? He shirks out of the cloth and he runs off naked. Jettisons his faith in order to trade it for safety. How many people in our world shirk out of their faith because there's something else they're looking for? The church tells me I can't do this and I want to do it, so I'm gone. Or I got to do certain things in order to fulfill my ambitions, and the church is holding me back. So many people casting their faith aside for some lesser good, and they think, I got it now, I've arrived, I'm on my way. No, you're cold, exposed, and naked, just like that young man in the garden. More and more people do this every day, friends. You know it as well as I do. And swimming upstream against that tide is a large number of people in our RCIA this year who last week you saw them at the noon Mass for the scrutiny. This week they were at 10 o'clock Mass. They'll be at the Easter Vigil Mass, baptized and confirmed and communicated into the body and blood of Christ. Those are the people who have seen the great value, who are not dropping that linen cloth off. They're putting it on and saying, I'm ready to walk with Jesus. Because if I follow him, he's going to work my life out. He knows what needs to be done. Give it over to him, friends, in your prayer. Seriously giving time for this and listening to what he says. You know, prayer isn't just talking all the time. It's letting God speak to us. And he'll say things like, in that meeting tomorrow, say this. That's brilliant. Wow, I will. When this happens again, do it this way. All of this infused knowledge he is ready to give us. He's completely in control. He knows all things. Let us follow him every step of the way. Come to church throughout the Triduum. Long, exhausting liturgies. You're here every day. You feel like a wilted rag by the end of it, and you know that you have suffered alongside with him as his victory follows. Every knee shall bend before the Lord our God. Let us stand and proclaim our faith.